what if the real secret to like a massive breakthrough isn't pushing harder, but actually hitting the brakes, locking yourself in, and doing absolutely nothing on the outside?
I mean, it goes against literally everything we're taught.
Totally. But before we unpack this art of strategic stillness, just a quick heads up, you can actually explore these ideas further by downloading our app YUY.
Yeah, it's right there in the Apple App Store.
Exactly. And if you want to, hold this wisdom in your hands, the book we're talking about today, The Mind Key to the I Ching, is officially available on Amazon too.
Highly recommend grabbing a physical copy.
Yeah, it's a game changer. So today we are stepping into this profound piece of ancient strategy, right? But we're using it to solve a very modern problem.
Right, because human nature doesn't really change.
Exactly. So we're looking at Hexagram 26 from the I Ching, which translates to Great Accumulating, or the Great Taming.
The Great Taming, yeah. I love that phrasing.
It's powerful. To get our heads around this, I want you to visualize a massive hydroelectric dam, like just a huge concrete structure.
Just millions of tons of concrete.
Right. And behind this structure is a vast, roaring, incredibly powerful river. Now, that river represents your dynamic energy, your ambition, your creative force, all of that.
It's that urge to just go out and conquer.
Yes, exactly. But it is completely contained by this quiet, immovable mountain of concrete, which represents your boundaries, your intentional stillness.
The structure that holds the potential.
Right. Because think about those moments when you feel this massive urge to, I don't know, launch a project, or prove a point to your boss, or show the world what you can do.
But your gut is screaming that the timing is wrong.
Yes. You know it's not the right moment, but the urge is still there. So this deep dive is entirely about how to safely hold on to that explosive energy without letting it leak out or, well, blow up prematurely.
Which is so easy to do. We just leak energy all day long.
Well, constantly. But before we get into the mechanics of building this internal dam, I think we really need to understand the blueprint we're working from here.
Yeah, the framework is key.
Right, because we hear I Ching, and we immediately think of, like, ancient fortune-telling or divination. But how does this text actually function as a strategic framework?
Well, that is a really critical foundation to establish right off the bat. The I Ching is fundamentally a book of systems. It's about changes and cycles.
So it's not just a crystal ball.
Not at all. A hexagram isn't a static picture. It's more like an architecture consisting of 6 individual lines stacked from the bottom up to the top.
Okay, so it's a progression.
Exactly. You can think of these 6 lines as a map of a situation evolving over time. The bottom line represents the very beginning of an impulse or a scenario.
The ground floor, basically.
Right. And as you move up the lines, you progress through internal development, then external interaction, and finally the culmination or release of that energy at the very top line.
So for Hexagram 26, this Great Accumulating, it's basically a 6-step masterclass in how to manage raw power.
That's exactly what it is. But before we even look at the first step, this entire hexagram is governed by 3 core rules.
Like meta-mentalities.
Yeah, meta-mentalities that you absolutely have to adopt if you want this to work. Otherwise, the dam just breaks.
Okay, let's establish those ground rules. What is the baseline requirement for someone trying to accumulate this kind of massive energy?
Well, the first rule is active restraint. You have to stop to save strength.
That sounds almost too simplistic, though.
It does, but think about it. You cannot fill a swimming pool if the drain is wide open. You just can't.
Right, the water just pours right out the bottom.
Exactly. So that's rule 1. The second rule is that you cannot simply rely on the comfort of your own internal pantry.
What do you mean by that? Like your existing knowledge?
Yeah, your comfort zone. To build a truly massive reservoir, you have to feed your internal world with new, vast, external perspectives, things far outside your normal routine.
Oh, I see. So you're not just isolating yourself from information. You're bringing in outside material to process in secret.
Exactly. You're stocking the pantry with exotic ingredients, so to speak. And then the third rule, which I think is the most important.
Okay, what's that one?
It's what prevents this entire process from turning into just neurotic hoarding. The ultimate goal of all this accumulating is a major leap.
A leap. So it's not just sitting on a pile of gold forever like a dragon.
Right. You aren't gathering power just to sit on it and feel superior. You are compressing it so you can eventually survive and thrive through a massive life challenge when the timing is actually right.
Wow. Okay, that third rule completely changes the framing for me. It's not about hiding or retreating from the world.
No, it's about preparation.
Right. It's about preparing for an inevitable collision with the world.
Yeah.
I love that. So following that architecture you mentioned, moving from the bottom to the top, let's start at the very base of the dam, the source of the river.
The very first line.
Yeah. The text describes this first stage with a concept that translates roughly to danger, beneficial to stop.
Danger, beneficial to stop.
This seems to deal with the exact moment our ambition first collides with reality.
That collision is where all accumulation begins. Just picture the very first moment, an aggressive impulse of yours, like a new business idea, or maybe a desire to confront a manager who's been driving you crazy.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
Right. Or even a sudden urge to just completely change your career. You take a step forward with this idea, and immediately you hit friction.
The environment pushes back.
Exactly. The environment says no, a lack of funding, a dismissive partner, or a market that just isn't responding to your startup.
Right, and our usual reaction is to fight that.
Right. But the principle here teaches that instead of stubbornly accelerating into that friction, you calmly and rationally apply the brakes.
Just full stop.
Full stop. It is an ego-free cessation of forward movement.
Man, that runs completely counter to the cultural water we swim in the West, though.
Oh, 100%. It's practically heresy.
Right. We are entirely conditioned by a mindset that glorifies relentless pushing. Hustle culture.
Right.
If a startup founder realizes their initial product launch is facing a lukewarm market, the standard advice is to just grind harder.
Pivot, hustle, break down the walls, move fast, and break things.
Exactly. Move fast and break things. Stopping the moment you sense environmental pushback feels like abandoning the mission entirely.
It feels like failure.
Yeah, I can literally hear the internal critic calling it cowardice. Like, oh, you gave up at the first sign of trouble.
And we really have to dismantle that cultural conditioning to understand the mechanics of this strategy. Stepping back in this specific context is the absolute opposite of cowardice.
How so?
Because it is the recognition that burning your finite capital, whether that is financial runway, your physical stamina, or just your emotional resilience burning, that at the starting line is a fatal miscalculation.
Because you won't have anything left for the actual journey.
Exactly. Think about the physics of momentum.
Yeah.
If you behave like a stubborn ram, you just hit the brick wall over and over again.
Right. Bam. Bam.
And you expend massive kinetic energy, you sustain structural damage like getting a concussion.
And the wall remains entirely unchanged.
Exactly. The wall doesn't care.
But the water, on the other hand, hits the wall and simply stops flowing forward.
Right. It stops its forward velocity, but it doesn't stop accumulating.
Oh, that's a huge distinction. It doesn't stop accumulating.
It pools. It patiently gathers mass and depth until its volume allows it to just effortlessly rise right over the obstacle.
So it's still moving just vertically instead of horizontally.
Exactly. The water hasn't surrendered its objective to move downstream at all. It has simply changed its mechanism of progress from blunt force to accumulation.
The ram relies on peak force, which depletes.
Yes, and the water relies on gathering mass, which compounds.
Wow, that distinction between peak force and compounding mass is just fascinating. And, this isn't just about grand entrepreneurial visions either.
No, it applies to everything, everyday life.
Right. Think about how this dynamic plays out in daily communication. We have all been in a scenario, maybe at Thanksgiving dinner or in a meeting, where a discussion with someone begins to veer into toxic circular territory.
Oh, the dreaded circular argument.
Yeah. You present a completely logical point, and they meet it with irrational defensiveness.
Yeah.
That defensiveness is the wall.
And the immediate ego-driven impulse is to act like the ram.
Yes. You want to push harder. You talk louder, you bring up more facts, and you try to force them to see your logic.
And doing so immediately escalates the friction. It drains your emotional reservoir, and honestly, it usually just reinforces their defensiveness.
It makes the wall thicker. But if you apply this first phase, the intelligent stop, you recognize the friction as a signal, not a challenge.
It's a stop sign, not a starting gun.
Right. You simply say, I can tell we aren't aligned right now. Let's just pause this conversation.
And what is remarkable about taking that action is the internal shift that follows.
You don't feel defeated, do you?
No, you don't feel the bitter frustration of defeat at all. Because you made the active choice to stop, you actually feel a surge of agency.
You feel the satisfaction of preserving your energy.
Exactly. Which brings us actually to the critical vulnerability of this whole process.
There's a catch.
There's always a catch. Stopping that initial crash is only the first step. Once you've paused, your baseline restless energy is still present, right?
Right. The river is still flowing into the dam.
Yes. And it will immediately begin searching for a loophole. You've hit the brakes, But how do you prevent your mind from sneaking out the back door when the stillness starts to feel really uncomfortable?
Because sitting still is awful when you're fired up.
It's agonizing. So the text uses a very striking image for the second line of the hexagram, removing the wheels from the carriage.
Removing the wheels. Okay, so the carriage is fully intact, the horses are fed, the destination is known, but you are physically dismantling your own ability to travel.
You're breaking your own car, essentially.
This shifts the dynamic entirely. We go from passive braking-like stopping because the environment presented an obstacle to active quarantine.
Active quarantine. I like that.
Yeah, you are constructing a barrier against your own impulses.
It is the ultimate form of proactive environment design. Your engine is running, and the desire to move is immense. If you don't literally remove the wheels, you are going to eventually press the gas pedal. You just will.
I see this play out constantly with modern technology and this whole concept of deep work.
Oh, technology is the perfect example here.
Right, like if someone is trying to study for a massive exam or write a complex proposal for work, the mental friction of that deep work becomes deeply uncomfortable very quickly.
The brain naturally seeks an escape hatch. It wants cheap dopamine.
Exactly. And our modern carriages are incredibly fast. The smartphone sitting right there on the desk is a carriage with the engine running.
The door is open and the engine is revving.
Yeah. The brain just whispers, hey, let's just check the news for a second, or let's see if that important email came in.
And that whisper is the sound of your internal reservoir leaking. It ties directly into the psychological mechanics of willpower.
Tell me more about that, because willpower feels so misunderstood.
It really is. We tend to view willpower as an innate character trait, right? Like, you either have it or you don't. You're either disciplined or you're lazy.
Right, like a moral feeling if you check your phone.
Exactly. But decades of cognitive research demonstrate that willpower actually functions much more like a biological battery. It is a strictly depleting resource.
So it runs out.
Yes. Every time your brain makes a decision, even a microscopic one, it consumes metabolic energy.
Okay, so if I leave my phone on the desk, face up, while I'm trying to write, I am not just ignoring it.
No, you're not.
I am actively making the decision not to pick it up, over and over again, every few seconds.
Yes. And that continuous decision-making process is a massive drain. You are spending a significant portion of your cognitive battery fighting the urge to drive away.
Wow, so I'm exhausted before I even write a sentence.
Exactly. But by removing the wheels, which in this scenario means putting the phone in another room, or using a website blocker, or literally deleting Instagram and TikTok off your phone for a month.
You eliminate the choice architecture entirely.
Yes, you stop fighting yourself. You create a state of profound, forced stillness where your deep analytical capability can actually engage.
Because your mental energy isn't fracturing into 1,000 tiny acts of resistance.
Precisely.
It is essentially outsourcing your self-control to your environment.
That's a great way to put it.
I actually know writers who literally hand their gaming consoles or their television power cords to a friend, and they tell them, do not return this to me until my draft is finished.
That is exactly removing the wheels from the carriage. But, there seems to be a subtle trap here, too.
What's the trap?
Well, I know people who claim to be in a phase of deep work or strategic accumulation, but their behavior suggests otherwise.
Like they're faking it?
Kind of. They announced their monk mode on social media.
Oh, right. I'm going off the grid, guys.
Exactly. And then they constantly check their analytics to see if their older posts are still performing. They hover around the periphery of their industry.
Ah, I see. That is the shadow side of this phase. And you're right, it is incredibly common. We could call it performative accumulation.
Performative accumulation.
They claim they have removed the wheels, but they are actually sitting in the driver's seat with the keys in the ignition, just idling the engine.
And an idling engine still burns fuel. If you are constantly checking to see if the world is missing you, you are leaking energy.
You haven't truly dismantled the mechanism of distraction.
No, you're just resting your foot on the brake pedal, waiting for literally any excuse to speed off. Genuine accumulation requires the absolute acceptance of temporary invisibility.
Temporary invisibility. Wow. That is a really tough pill to swallow in an attention economy where we're told that if we aren't seen, we don't exist.
It's terrifying for most people.
But let's say a listener achieves this. They hit the brakes, they accept the danger, they lock themselves in, and they ruthlessly remove the wheels.
Okay, so the environment is totally quiet.
Right. Now what? Because sitting in an empty room staring at the wall isn't building capability. The pressure inside the dam is building up.
The pressure is immense by this point, which naturally propels us into the third phase of the inner work.
The third line of the hexagram.
Yes. The imagery transitions from a dismantled carriage to something highly kinetic. It speaks of good horses chasing and practicing defense and driving.
Brilliant. Horses chasing. Inside the dam.
Metaphorically. You have preserved your energy, and you are now holding a stable full of thoroughbred horses. The raw power is there.
Okay, I see.
But if you release those horses into the world without rigorous training, they won't win a race. They will cause a stampede.
They will be destructive.
Exactly. So you must practice intensely, but you must do it strictly within the confines of your contained environment.
This requires a clear distinction, though. Let's unpack the difference between hoarding information and actual practice.
Because they're very different things.
Right. So if I decide I want to become a world-class public speaker, and I lock myself in my house, remove the wheels, and I read 100 books on the biomechanics of vocal projection and the psychology of persuasion, am I fulfilling this third phase?
No, because reading 100 books is still passive absorption.
Oh, really? Even if it's studying?
Even if it's studying, it is filling the reservoir with water, but it isn't building the turbines to actually generate electricity.
I love that turbine analogy.
Right, because the key phrase in the text is practicing defense and driving. This phase demands rigorous internal pressure testing.
So it's active.
Very active. It is the musician who plays scales for 10 hours a day in a soundproof basement where literally no one can validate them and no one can hear their mistakes.
It's the debater who ferociously argues against their own points in the mirror.
Yes, searching for every logical fallacy in their argument before they ever step onto a public stage.
So it's about introducing friction into the containment area.
Yeah.
You are shadowboxing.
Shadowboxing is the perfect word for it.
You are simulating the resistance of the real world while you are still in a safe, controlled environment.
It is the creation of synthetic adversity. True mastery requires that you sweat in the dark so you don't bleed in the light.
Sweat in the dark so you don't bleed in the light. That's good.
You have to stress test your capabilities internally, and if you bypass this step, you fall victim to what we often call the armchair general syndrome.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. The person who has consumed every military history book.
Yes, the one who has brilliant, highly articulated opinions on how a campaign should be run.
But who would completely freeze if someone handed them a real rifle?
Exactly. Because they never practiced defense. They never subjected their theories to simulated stress.
They only accumulated potential energy.
Right. They never trained the horses to respond to command under pressure. So when the dam finally opens, their energy will scatter chaotically. The internal practice must be substantially more rigorous than the anticipated external performance.
That is just a phenomenal blueprint for managing our own internal drive. We've mapped the entire bottom half of the dam.
The inner work.
But this philosophical system doesn't just deal with the self, right? It flips the perspective.
It does. It moves outward.
Right. Moving into the fourth line of the hexagram, we start looking at the mountain itself. We shift from managing our own explosive energy to managing the powerful, raw energy of the external world.
Like other people, environments, structural challenges.
Exactly. We transition from self-regulation to environmental regulation.
And the text provides a surprisingly gentle metaphor for this fourth phase. It talks about fitting a wooden headboard to a young calf.
Fitting a wooden headboard to a young calf, emphasizing the early stage of development, right? Before the animal has dangerous horns.
That timing is the entire key to the strategy.
Because calves are pretty harmless.
Exactly. Imagine a calf. It is growing, it has surplus energy, and it has a biological instinct to headbutt things. That instinct isn't malicious. It is simply raw energy-seeking expression.
It's just doing what calves do.
Right. Now consider the alternative. If you wait until that calf matures into a 2-ton bull with sharp, fully developed horns, and then you attempt to stop it from charging by wrestling it and trying to saw off its horns, the outcome is catastrophic.
It is violent, exhausting, and inherently destructive to both parties. You are fighting the animal at its absolute maximum kinetic potential.
But if you take a harmless, painless piece of wood, a headboard, and you securely strap it to the calf's head when it is young, the dynamic changes completely.
How so?
Well, the calf attempts to headbutt a fence. The wooden board distributes the pressure evenly. It doesn't cause the calf any pain, but it completely negates the impact.
So the calf doesn't get the satisfaction of the hit.
Exactly. The calf's brain processes the feedback. Oh, this action does not produce the desired result, so it never develops the neural pathway or the behavioral habit of destructive headbutting.
The energy is restrained and redirected before it ever has the opportunity to become dangerous.
This represents the absolute essence of early frictionless boundaries.
Frictionless boundaries. This principle maps perfectly onto almost every interpersonal dynamic we navigate. It is the foundational architecture of effective parenting, for one.
Parenting is the ultimate test of this.
Right. You install the child's safety locks on the cleaning supply cabinets before the toddler even develops the motor skills to open doors.
Exactly. You aren't engaging in a screaming match with a toddler holding a bottle of bleach.
Right. You have simply quietly engineered the environment so the conflict never materializes in the first place.
It removes the need for discipline by replacing it with structure. And this translates directly into corporate leadership and client management, too.
Think about onboarding a new, highly demanding corporate client.
Oh, the ones who think they own you.
Exactly. If you establish clear, friendly, but immovable boundaries on day one, saying something like, "We are thrilled to partner with you. To ensure our team is delivering peak creative work, our communication protocol is that we respond to all emails within business hours and we completely disconnect on weekends."
You have just fitted the wooden headboard to the calf.
The client is the calf. Their enthusiasm and demands are the energy.
And if you fail to do that...
If you don't set that boundary early, they text you at 10 p.m. on a Sunday.
Yep.
You want to please them, so you answer. And guess what? You have just rewarded the headbutting.
You've taught them that it works.
Right. 2 weeks later, they demand a Sunday morning Zoom call. By month 3, they are dictating your entire weekend schedule.
And then what happened?
When you finally reach your breaking point and push back, they feel betrayed. They get angry because you are now trying to saw the horns off a full-grown bull that you helped feed.
That's exactly it. The profound elegance of the calf's headboard is that it creates restraint without resentment.
Restraint without resentment.
When a boundary is established early and seamlessly integrated into the initial environment, it is perceived by the other party as just objective reality. It's just the architecture of the relationship.
It's just how things are.
Exactly. It doesn't trigger a defensive ego response. However, waiting until a behavioral pattern is deeply entrenched or a boundary is violently crossed, that guarantees conflict. You are no longer establishing a rule, you are attacking their established momentum.
Restraint without resentment is the ideal. But let's inject some harsh reality into this for a second.
Okay, let's do it.
Because we rarely have the luxury of arriving early to every situation. We don't always get to deal with calves.
True. Life is messy.
Frequently, we step into a new role or inherit a project, and we find ourselves facing a fully grown, highly aggressive force. The horns are sharp, and they are pointed directly at our chest.
Right. The conflict is already fully mature.
Exactly. How does this framework handle a threat that is already fully developed?
The text actually anticipates this exact scenario in the 5th phase. The imagery shifts from the gentle calf to something significantly more lethal. It talks about the tusks of a castrated pig.
That is a very jarring shift in imagery, the tusks of a castrated pig. I'm assuming we aren't talking about literal farming techniques here.
Thankfully, no.
What is the strategic mechanism hidden in this metaphor?
It is a profound metaphor for advanced de-escalation. It teaches us to neutralize the underlying drive behind aggression rather than combating the weapons of aggression.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Picture a wild boar. It is equipped with massive razor-sharp tusks. If you attempt to fight the tusks directly, if you try to parry them, block them, or break them, you are engaging in a bloody, high-variance battle where severe injury is almost guaranteed.
Because you are engaging the threat at its absolute strongest point.
Precisely. But we have to ask, why does the boar use the tusks in the first place?
Right. What's driving it?
The weapon is just a tool. The deployment of the tool is driven by biology, by territorial hormones, by fear. The metaphor of castration in the ancient text represents surgically addressing the root cause of the aggression.
So you bypass the weapon entirely.
You do not touch the tusks. You remove the biological desire to fight. Once the internal drive is eliminated, the boar ceases to be a threat.
It just stops.
The tusks remain sharp, they're still attached, but they are rendered completely moot. They become useless ornaments because the animal no longer possesses the motivation to use them.
Okay, I understand the theoretical mechanism there, but applying this to human behavior requires a massive leap.
It does take practice.
Let's ground this in a modern, high-stakes scenario. Suppose I am in a corporate boardroom presenting a new strategic initiative, and a colleague, let's call him John, starts aggressively attacking my data.
We all know a John.
We all know John.
Okay.
He is tearing down my financial projections, questioning my methodology, and basically trying to humiliate me in front of the executive team.
John is coming at you with his tusks.
Exactly. John's arguments, his data points, are the tusks. If I follow standard corporate combat rules, I pull up my appendix slides and I fight his data with my data. I fight the tusks.
Which is exactly why boardroom disputes devolve into entrenched zero-sum warfare.
Right. We just yell numbers at each other.
If you fight his data, you are validating his method of engagement. You are signaling that the tusks are the correct weapon for this interaction, which forces him to sharpen his arguments and attack you even harder.
But I can't just ignore his points.
Right.
If he is attacking my numbers, I have to defend the integrity of my work. How do I, castrate the pig in a boardroom without sounding like a condescending therapist?
You do it by exercising intense emotional intelligence to look past the spreadsheet.
Look past the spreadsheet.
Okay. When a colleague bears their tusks like that, it is almost never truly about the methodology of the data.
It's about ego.
Yes. It is driven by a root fear. Perhaps John feels that your new initiative will make his department obsolete. Perhaps he is deeply insecure about his recent performance and feels like he needs to publicly dominate a peer to regain the CEO's favor.
So the data argument is just a proxy war for his underlying insecurity.
Exactly. The financial projections are the tusks. The fear of losing his budget or his status is the root drive.
And if you understand that, you change your tactical approach entirely.
Completely. Instead of opening your appendix slides and escalating the data war, you pause the presentation. You look at him and you address the root.
What do you even say in that moment?
You might say something like, John, before we get lost in the weeds of these projections, I want to state clearly for the room that this entire initiative is built on the assumption that your department continues to receive robust funding. In fact, our back-end logistics will rely entirely on your team's leadership.
Wow. That completely flips the script. You aren't fighting his numbers at all. You are systematically dismantling his reason for fighting in the first place.
You provided the exact psychological safety his aggression was desperately trying to secure. You validated his underlying concern without ever conceding your own position on the data.
And what happens next?
Watch what happens to his physiology in that moment. The tension drains from his shoulders, his tone drops. He might even nod and start casually agreeing with your broader premise.
You didn't break his arguments.
Yeah.
You made it so he no longer had any utility for them.
Exactly. The tusks become ornaments.
But man, that requires an incredible amount of internal stability. When someone attacks you publicly, the biological response is a massive spike in cortisol.
Oh, your amygdala completely hijacks your brain.
Right. You want to fight back immediately. To be able to sit in that fire, absorb the attack, look past the aggressive behavior, and calmly diagnose the fear driving it. You can only do that if you have a massive internal reservoir.
Which is exactly why the hexagram is structured sequentially. You cannot successfully execute phase 5 if you have not mastered phases 1 through 3.
The internal work.
Yes. If your ego is fragile because you haven't done the quiet, unglamorous internal practice, you will react to the tusks with your own tusks.
You'll just bleed all over the boardroom.
You will be easily provoked. Only a person who has quietly accumulated true, deep, tested capability can afford the luxury of softly neutralizing an attacker.
The system builds upon itself perfectly. The dam gets stronger with every phase. We hit the brakes at the first sign of danger. We remove the wheels of our own distractions.
We sparred in the dark to build genuine capability.
We set early, frictionless boundaries to manage our environment. And we learn to neutralize mature conflict at its psychological root. We have spent an enormous amount of time and energy compressing this river.
A lot of pressure.
So we arrive at the sixth and final line of the hexagram. What happens when the dam finally reaches absolute capacity?
The text describes the culmination of this immense process with a phrase that evokes ultimate freedom. It calls it the thoroughfare of heaven, or the highway of heaven.
A highway of heaven. That implies unimpeded, massive movement.
It is the ultimate release of all that accumulated potential. After all the discipline, the hiding, and the friction, the gates finally open. The mountain, the boundary that has been deliberately compressing your energy, finally gives way.
The dam opens.
But crucially, because of all the meticulous preparation, the release is not a chaotic, destructive flood. It doesn't wash away the towns downstream.
It's controlled.
It gives way to an open, multi-lane, perfectly paved highway. Your entry into the external world is incredibly smooth, highly directional, and entirely natural.
You know, this perfectly describes the phenomenon of the so-called overnight success. We see this constantly in culture and business, don't we?
All the time. People love the myth of the overnight success.
Right. An author releases a debut novel that is just structurally flawless and deeply profound. Or a founder launches a company that seamlessly captures market share right out of the gate.
Or an executive steps into a massive leadership role and just operates with astonishing poise on day one.
Exactly. The external world looks at them and asks, where did they come from? How are they so naturally gifted?
But the public is only witnessing the water hitting the highway of heaven. They are observing the release.
They didn't see the dam.
No, they did not witness the decade of the dam holding the water back. They didn't see the grueling internal pressure. They didn't see the weekends spent removing the wheels and sitting in total isolation while their peers were out seeking immediate gratification.
The poise they exhibit on stage is the direct mathematical result of the pressure they endured in private. They aren't faking their confidence. They belong in that high-stakes environment because their foundation was forged in the dark.
The energy just carries them effortlessly.
But as we look at this final phase, is there a risk of failure here? Because, I can think of individuals who seem to be permanently stuck in the preparation phase.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge danger.
They have 4 master's degrees, they've written 15 drafts of a business plan, they endlessly tinker with their product, but they never actually launch the thing.
That is the ultimate pathology of great accumulation. We call it the miser trap.
The miser trap.
We discussed earlier that willpower and restraint are tools, right? But they can easily become a security blanket. Sometimes people grow so accustomed to the safety of the accumulation phase, the predictable, controlled environment of the secret sparring ring, that they begin to view the boundaries as permanent walls rather than a temporary dam.
They forget the third rule we established at the very beginning of the deep dive.
Yeah.
The ultimate goal is to cross the Great River.
Exactly. If you indefinitely contain the water, it ceases to be a dynamic reservoir. It just becomes a stagnant, rotting pool.
It goes bad.
Accumulation for the sheer sake of accumulation is driven by fear of exposure. When the environment shifts, when the universe finally presents the open highway and the timing is correct, you must possess the courage to dismantle the dam.
You have to push the button.
You have to trust the rigorous work you did in the dark and step onto the thoroughfare.
This entire framework completely flips the modern script on achievement, doesn't it?
It completely reverses it.
True power, the kind that reshapes industries and lives, isn't about constant, frantic outward motion. It isn't about ensuring you are always seen, always hustling on social media, always loudly fighting every single battle that crosses your desk.
That's just exhausting.
It is found in the profound, counterintuitive discipline to hit the brakes when the environment isn't ready. It is the ruthless commitment to dismantle the mechanisms of our own distraction.
Taking the wheels off.
Right. It is the unglamorous grind of stress-testing our skills in absolute privacy. It is a wisdom to establish boundaries when they are just harmless headboards, and the deep emotional intelligence to diffuse aggressive conflict by addressing the hidden fears of others.
It fundamentally redefines the concept of waiting. It transforms a period of delay from a state of victimhood and frustration into a state of immense, deliberate power gathering.
I love that, power gathering. So the next time you find yourself frustrated because you are stuck in a waiting period, maybe a promotion is delayed, your creative work isn't gaining traction yet, or you are forcing yourself to study in isolation while the rest of the world seems to be accelerating, remember the architecture of the dam.
You are not trapped.
You are not trapped. You are pooling. You are gathering mass. You are doing the invisible structural work that will make your eventual breakthrough look completely effortless when the gates finally open.
We have spent this time thoroughly mapping the mechanics of accumulating your energy, building that structure, and preparing for the release. But theory requires application.
Always.
So think about your own daily routine right now, the specific habits that dictate your days. What is the one set of wheels you know you need to take off today but have been too afraid to dismantle?